Hello, everyone. Welcome back to session 6 of the conference, which is basically focused on the role of women in mining and how they are contributing to the mining industry. So for that, we have our first presenter, Professor Neele Motimeri. She is a mineral resources governance expert, and she would generalize on the role of women in the mining industry. So let's see what she has to say with us.
Here today because my name has been put forward by a woman to come and talk about women in mining in the African continent. I'm sure you're all aware that the AWIMA, Association of Women in Mining Africa, was created as a network of women in mining, oil and gas associations, and it is there to empower women in the African extractive sector. The vision of AWIMA is a strong, responsible, and more inclusive African mining industry for women. And I would like to say that I stand for that, and I believe all the members of AWIMA stand with that vision and behind that vision. My presentation to you today will touch a little bit on the profile of women in the mining sector in Africa, some of the challenges that we face, and the gender dimensions with regards to legal institutional frameworks, as well as the dimensions around social and economic health and environmental aspects, particularly from the perspective of strategies to ensure inclusivity of women so that women can fully participate in the benefits of the mining and mineral sector. Women in mining in Africa, I would say that about 99% of the women that are in the mining sector in Africa actually are participating through the artisanal small-scale mining subsector. Of those, and this is based on evidence that comes through from many quarters, of the approximately 9 million people in the ASM sector in Africa, 50% are women, and sadly, girl children are also involved in this sector. Women on the African continent are there as workers, professionals, then there's maybe 1%, if not fewer than 1% of the participants in the sector as engineers and geologists and scientists. Many of them, as I indicated, are in the ASM sector, so participate as laborers. Women are involved in the spectrum of ASM to large-scale mining operations, and the production of commodities that women contribute to include diamonds, gold, colored gemstones, metals like cobalt and copper, and also tin, tungsten, tantalum, as well as industrial minerals and construction materials, some of which are fashioned into finished goods. Examples being pottery and bricks from clay, as well as jewelry from gold and gemstones. The gender dimensions of women, if I can just start off with the challenges. The challenges that we face in the mining sector are driven by gender norms and values that tend to perpetuate these imbalances. So women are excluded from governing bodies and institutions, and these are the kind of bodies that would actually be able to bring about change. But because women's voices are excluded, and therefore these power imbalances tend to be perpetuated. There is differential access to resources like finance and access to rights for land, which is important if you want to accumulate capital to fully participate in the sector. Women are excluded from some of the most profitable areas of the mining value chain for many reasons, some of them being that we are deemed as being physically or intellectually not capable of participating in some of those aspects of the value chain. There are some aspects of health and safety that are very specific to women examples would be gender-based violence. And also, for example, women are at high risk of being exposed to some of the dangerous chemicals that are used in the sector, like mercury. One of the challenges that women face is that we tend to have low literacy rates, and that limits the way and the degree to which women can take advantage of opportunities that would be able to improve the training and the skills, which and also even just awareness raising of our rights, and therefore that continues to be a challenge that negatively impacts on the capacity of women to fully participate in the sector. So when one thinks about mainstreaming gender, I think that we all know that there are global protocols, there are continental protocols that talk to mainstreaming gender in different sectors, and mining is not different. But I believe that the way the difference is really made is at a national level, and that's where change can be really effected. And for this to happen, all these global protocols really need to start guiding how evidence gathering to inform national policy change or national policy formulation needs to happen. So here we're talking about properly understanding the context in which these things are actually happening, so that they can actually then lead to the project design at different levels, making sure that different stakeholders are involved in the processes, and the data collection must be such that the data is collected, first of all, in a way that the data is gender disaggregated, but in a way also that ensures that the voices of women to contribute to this data collection is properly reflected. And consultation is a very important part of this evidence gathering, first of all, in terms of collecting the data, but also in terms of validating the data. And this validation is what will eventually make sure that the evidence is taken into account when we're actually formulating these policies that will hopefully make a difference. And of course, once we have those policies in place, the execution needs to make sure that there is enough resources allocated to those aspects of the national policy that will bring about gender equality, that will bring about better involvement of women and strengthening of women's participation and benefits from the mining and mineral sector. And of course, as these national policies are being implemented, the one way to make sure that the objectives are being met is to make sure that they are monitoring the evaluation programs in place, and this evaluation, this M&E, must be checking on whether the objectives of ensuring equitable and equal access and equal participation of women in mining are actually being realized by the implementation of these policies. When one wants to consider the gender dimensions of legal and institutional frameworks, one wants to look at, firstly, whether there is facilitation of these appropriate policy and legal instruments by ensuring that there is capacity in terms of how these frameworks are developed, and that gender competencies that are required to make sure that this happens are actually taken into account and included. And you also have to make sure that women and men are involved in the development of these policies and regulations in whatever programs, particularly when one wants to deal with things that negatively impact women, like environmental hazards and equal participation in how to prevent. Another aspect of these frameworks is with regards to involvement of stakeholders in this policy formulation process and in their implementation. We have to consider that there is interventions that actually support good governance, because good governance, particularly for women's organizations, which allows them to have a voice to actually influence how things are done. It is important to make sure that we improve the capacity of women to advocate for their own needs. And I think AWIMA is a case in point in ensuring that. In providing a safe space for women to voice their opinions and enhance their capacity is also a very important part of these legal institutional frameworks. To ensure that there is inclusivity, some of the strategies that one wants to think about would be include ensuring that both women and men participate fully in all the stages of the mining value chain. It is important to make sure that we identify and promote interventions that support women's participation. And this can include developing and dissemination of practices that consider the needs of both men and women so that we can have equal access to things like training to improve the skills of women, to build the capacity of women to fully participate in the sector in, for example, gender sensitivity or disincentives and incentives that ensure behavior change. There's also the issue of improving things like how mechanization is developed so that economics that are appropriate for women are taken into account. It is important, for example, to raise the awareness about the opportunities that exist for women in the mining sector. Of course, for men too, but because women are lagging behind, it's important to do that for women. That can lead to support programs that, for example, make sure that women's reproductive roles do not prevent them from optimally participating in all the opportunities that are present in the mining sector. And this can happen through providing information and through messaging that is gender sensitive. And of course, access to things like finance, as I mentioned in the previous slide, it should be equitable for both men and women so that interventions are realized and can lead to change for inclusivity and equality. I think I'd like to end by just reiterating again the importance of gender mainstreaming in the mining sector. I think on that note, I'd like to point out to the African Union's Africa Mining Vision, which seeks transparent, equitable, and optimal exploitation of mineral resources to underpin broad-based, sustainable growth and socio-economic development. Notably, it does mention gender inclusion in one of its key tenets. And of course, the mechanics of this are kind of slowly being realized, but not fully worked out. And that's something that an organization like AWIMA is actually pushing for. And from a national policy perspective, and one looks at some of the policies that exist on the African continent, there is a little bit of progress. Some regulations and policy frameworks actually do set out targets for the number of women that are desired in participating in the sector. Obviously, the targets still have to be met, but at least the intention and the desire is there. And I think one of the very important things for making sure that we bridge the gender gap in mining is making sure that we're providing services and resources for women to ensure that they can fully participate. On that note, I'd like to say thank you very much for participating, for allowing me to participate in this conference through this recording of my presentation. And I wish you luck with the rest of the proceedings of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Nish, for your wonderful presentation. Next in line, we have Ibogo Mosito. She is the Executive Director, Business Development for the Africa Maintenance Equipment, and she would also enlighten us about how women manage to solve challenges. Ibogo, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to be one of the speakers. And the first speaker spoke about almost everything that I wanted to touch on. But I would like to share my presentation with you.
Yeah.
Thank you. First of all, my name is Tebogo Mosito, and as the Executive Director of Africa Maintenance Equipment, based here in South Africa, in a small rural town in Rustenburg. I'm here to talk about, the solutions, how women manage to solve challenges, especially in mining. In today's COVID-19 environment, women have seen a greater decline in their work opportunities than men and an increase in unpaid care work, leading to what some are calling a pink collar recession. Today, I want to share with you, some of the few things we can do as women to solve these challenges in the mining sector. We must keep learning and work to build confidence, take more risk, and lean in. As women, we need to finish, our university studies, graduate degrees, volunteer for assignments so that we can learn on the job, develop stronger interpersonal skills. Where I am at the moment, you find that there's only few women in the industry, so we are sometimes bullied. If you find that you are being bullied, women should build healthy relationships, which will advocate for them to create strong personal brand, establish guidelines before each project, position themselves as experts in their field, and communicate with confidence. I find that a lot of women don't have confidence to stand up for themselves. So we as women, we need to look for organizations that provide formal leadership development opportunities and implementing more inclusive policies and practices around recruiting, hiring, and promotions. So if you are a female leader, you must make sure that you implement those policies and ensure that, we equip all women with the knowledge and skills so that they can become more positive when they are presenting themselves in the mining sector. And as women, we must know what we want. We must be relentless in our preparation so that the male counterpart can take us seriously. And as women, again, I think we need to speak up, make our presence known as a leader, and collaborate for good. Because when we speak up, they give us an opportunity. They can see that we want to learn. My advice to women is to say, everywhere, let us take control of our negative thoughts by becoming consciously aware of them and either replace them with more positive and encouraging thoughts or to accept them and decide to move forward despite them. Because a lot of women are, blocked by the negative thoughts. So they are unable to advance their career because they feel like they are not good enough. They feel like they cannot fight for better pay or other benefits which most of our male counterparts are having. And as women in the mining sector, I really encourage us to be technologically advanced and know all these innovative, ways of solving problems so that when we are working in the mining sector, we can now really get the opportunity to learn more. I don't want to extend my presentation. I would like us to have a robust discussion. If there's any question after what I have just presented, I am available to answer any questions and to dwell more on it. I would like to just thank you now for, giving me the opportunity to share some of my thoughts. And just in closing, I want to just share with you pictures of the current industry that I'm in, where as a woman, I'm learning every day about new things. And if you are not asking the right questions, we cannot grow as a woman. Thank you. These are some of the projects that I am leading as a woman, and it's mostly male dominated. You find that most of the time I'm the only woman. So as a woman, I am really learning and making sure that other women are getting opportunities. I thank you so much. I will end my presentation here.
Thank you so much, for a great presentation by you. It was very short and crisp, and I think everybody made sense out of it. All right,
Thank
great.
you.
So, Deepak, I have a question for you as well. Because mining is an industry in general. If we see, there are most of the males that are overpowering the mining industry. So what do you think, what should be the steps for the women and youth to make their footprint into the mining industry? What is the first step, and what kind of awareness do people need regarding this?
For me, the first step that helped me was mentorship and coaching, and also taking the young girls, like taking them to the mining in order to understand the environment. And from the very first visit, they will try to to make a decision whether they want to be in that kind of an environment. Because myself, when I started, I thought it's like a corporate environment, only to find it's more technical. I spend more hours at the mine, then I spend less hours with my kids. So many women, they would rather spend more time with their families than being at the mining environment. So as women, we need to first go on a site visit and like an induction program where you can really understand the whole mining value chain before you can decide that you want to be one of the women in mining.
So do you think
Thank you.
the educational institutions play an important role here?
It's very important to have, the theoretical background, but also you need the practical knowledge and exposure, and yeah, in order to really make a full, decision about that. And I encourage more women to tap into mining because it's highly lucrative and they can make more money out of it.
Definitely. So women like you are a basic inspiration for the young girls and the women out there, and so they can take examples how to enter the mining industry and make their impact in the whole industry. Thank you so
Yes.
much, Abolgo. So next,
Thank you.
we have a very, very important and the spotlight presentation of the whole conference, which is by Oxford Business Group. And Kevin Graham, he is the editorial for Egypt from Oxford Business Group. He has a very important report to present, and let's see what he has to say to us. Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin Graham. I'm Oxford Business Group's editorial manager here in Egypt since 2016. Oxford Business Group is a global economic research and advisory company headquartered in London and focused on fast growth markets in Africa, the Middle East, Asia, and Latin America. OBG has been in Egypt going back to the year 2000, producing a variety of research from annual economic reports to business leader surveys and global platform videos. For the first time today, however, we're launching a focus report specifically on the petroleum and mining sector here in Egypt. Despite the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic and volatility of the past year and a half, as policymakers have sought to formulate effective responses to mitigate health impacts, while balancing still allowing as much economic activity as possible, Egypt has remained one of the few countries globally to maintain positive economic growth. GDP growth in Egypt has remained over 2% in both of the past two fiscal years, and the expectation is that in the current fiscal year, Egypt's economic growth will rebound to around 5.5%. All of this highlights the importance and impact of the broad fiscal and economic reforms that were carried out over the past several years, from 2016 to 2019, with the backing of the IMF. The strengthening of regulatory environment, along with these economic measures, has really contributed to Egypt's rise in the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business rankings, where Egypt went from 131st out of 189 in 2016 to 114th out of 190 in 2000. In order to carry this forward, though, the priority is shifting from the broad fiscal and macroeconomic policy focus towards a focus on continued sectoral reforms. A great example of the kinds of reforms that I'm talking about is the petroleum and mining sector, as we discuss in the focus report in great depth. Although the mining sector in Egypt currently accounts for around 0.5% of GDP, it's set to be one of the fastest growing and most strategic sectors of the coming decade in light of public policy prioritization. 42 initiatives are in place to attract greater investment in the mining sector under the country's overarching plan through 2030. All of this goes back to January 2020, when Egypt issued executive regulations for a new mining law. which aims to transition the sector away from a framework that was based on the petroleum industry, namely the employment of production sharing agreements, which hampered growth, to a framework better suited to the investment requirements and production cycle of mining with regards to tax, rents, and royalties. Additionally, the new mining framework allows investors to take advantage of the provisions of the 2017 investment law that are designed to attract, specifically, more FDI to Egypt. Of course, a lot of the initial interest in Egypt's mining potential has centered around gold. Yet, up through 2020, the country's only producing gold mine was the Sukari mine. It's interesting, though, speaking with a mining firm just a couple of weeks ago, they were highlighting Egypt's long history of gold mining and craftsmanship, going back really to ancient Egypt. And yet, over the past century or so, this has really seen a significant pause up until the developments of this year. And I think that's what's generating so much excitement. Following a bid round in November 2020, 11 companies were awarded 82 gold exploration concessions in the Eastern Desert. A second round focused on 10 different minerals, also in the Eastern Desert, spread over 38,000 kilometers for a total of 208 blocks, is also underway. Companies of varying profiles have shown interest, with bids both local and international coming from players headquartered in Canada, Australia, and the UK. The new legal framework for the establishment of a vibrant mining sector that is attractive to investors is certainly a step in the right direction, but will likely be insufficient on its own. It's also necessary to build local mining expertise, to invest in the proper direct and indirect infrastructure to support mining activity. This kind of investment in building up the ecosystem of a local mining industry will have significant economic benefits beyond the value of any extracted minerals. And I think this is really key. If the focus can be on the development of this ecosystem, the job growth, and the knowledge base created through those jobs, the impact will go much further than the impact simply of the extracted minerals. Just as Egypt has made investments in oil refineries and LNG plants, the mining sector requires investments in laboratories, processing plants, and mine-to-port infrastructure, such as railways, as well as in craftsmanship and workshops. And all of this, just like in the petroleum sector, will contribute to Egypt's economy beyond the value just of the gold, or in the petroleum sector, the oil or gas. Mining, when we look to the future, mining is one of Egypt's most promising sectors in terms of growth and development. The government aims to increase mining's contribution to GDP from 0.6% in early 2021 to 5% by 2025. Supporting this goal are discoveries such as the 1 million ounces of gold found in a concession operated by the Shalatin Mining Company, and the prospect that there are similar discoveries still to be made. Of course, all of this research was done in collaboration with our partners, so I'd like to thank them. But rather than taking any more of your time, you can find the full in-depth analysis online at oxfordbusinessgroup.com. And so I guess I'll thank you and leave it there.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you so much, Oxford Business Group, for your contribution in this conference. I hope you can always, audience can always go and meet Oxford Business Group and their representatives at the exhibition area. And if not, they can drop a message for them there. And you might have noted the details, and you can talk with them further for other discussions. Thank you so much for being with us for this session. So in next 20 minutes, we'll be starting with the most important session, which would be the VIP roundtable, which will start at 2:30 p.m. Egypt time. So do not miss that session, because we are going to discuss some of the very important topics of Egypt International Mining Show Conference. And we would also discuss the key takeaways throughout the conference. Thank you so much. See you in next 20 minutes.